You might well ask, why Japanese gardens, especially as I have never been to Japan? Well, I was inspired by Monet's garden and his famous Japanese bridge over the water lilies. I started to think about how much Japanese art and design has influenced the Western world. The French term Japanese refers to the popularity and influence of Japanese art and design in Western Europe in the 19th century, following the forced reopening of trade with Japan in 1858 up until the First World War. This is exactly the time that Monet was painting and his garden was flourishing. Nearly every country in the world has a Japanese garden, a testament to the enduring legacy of Japan's huge influence on the way we garden. They are gardens that seem effortless and natural, and yet all is carefully positioned and managed so that we will experience plants, stone, and water exactly as the garden maker intended. Japanese gardens are about inspiring and soothing the soul. And you don't have to be a gardening expert or Zen Buddhist to appreciate all they have to offer: the beauty, the tranquility, the connection with nature. There is a very rich, old, and complicated history, and at least seven distinct historic periods going back to the 7th century with their own styles and philosophies. The designs of Japanese gardens are closely associated with Japanese aesthetics, religion, and philosophical ideas, and there is an avoidance of artificial ornamentation. Rather, the natural landscape is highlighted. Plants, as well as worn, aged materials, are generally used by Japanese garden designers to suggest an ancient and faraway natural landscape and to express the fragility of existence as well as time's unstoppable advance. The Japanese garden's most important function is providing atmosphere and surroundings which make day-to-day life happier. There is an attempt to maintain the appearance of nature, but things have been tidied up, stylized, moved about, and manipulated. The Japanese gardener attempts to express nature better than nature does itself. As in any dramatic presentation, the only integrity is that of the performance. In short, nature has become a spectacle to behold. Essentially, the earliest recorded Japanese gardens were the pleasure gardens of the Japanese emperors and nobles. Here we see stones in the garden of the first Kyoto Imperial Palace. These stones were originally part of a 16th century bridge over the Kamo River near Kyoto, which was destroyed by an earthquake. In this presentation, we look at the essential elements of the Japanese garden, and there are three of them. First, the permanence of stone. Second, plants for texture and color. And third, the soothing reflective qualities of water. All are seen here in this very peaceful, tranquil scene. Note the little footbridge at the top of the picture and all the lovely moss. Moss grows best in shaded areas with lots of moisture, but if you provide these basic conditions, you can grow moss in your garden. Have you heard of using buttermilk to create moss? It has to be buttermilk, which is high in acidity to encourage the moss to grow. Apparently this works. We see many red bridges in Japanese gardens, and red is an important color in Japanese culture. Just think of their rising sun flag. And in this case, the red bridge represents wisdom, transformation, and all that is sacred. Japanese bridges, as with the Japanese gardens as a whole, are designed to offer a meditative and self-reflective experience. Pruning is key, just like in bonsai. And the type of pruning seen here is called cloud pruning. Part fantasy, part bonsai, part topiary. Cloud pruning can be taken to extraordinary levels. Here are gnarled pines, a red acer in autumn plumage, and the simple but beautiful stone basin with raked gravel. And they highlight the less is more principle. I go into detail about the importance of raking gravel and how stones are used to enormous effect. I explore the various styles and elements of Japanese gardens and then showcase three specific gardens, one of which is considered the very best in Japan. This is the Adachi Museum of Art, which is best known for its award-winning garden. It has been named the best garden in Japan annually since 2003. Its founder was a man called Adachi Zenko, who was a Japanese industrialist, philanthropist, and entrepreneur, and who came from very humble beginnings near the site of the museum. The garden is his lasting legacy. The most basic element of any Japanese garden design comes from the realization that every detail has a significant value. Japanese gardens are certainly very different from the gardens of the West, and as the world becomes more crowded and difficult, it may be to this style of garden that we will all be drawn. As the American poet May Sarton said, and I quote, "Everything that slows us down and forces patience, everything that sets us back into the slow circles of nature is a help. Gardening is an instrument of grace." I will leave you with this incredibly beautiful and simple view of a dry garden, and I invite you to join me for the full program by just consulting details on my website.